Calibra. Question number 25. Discuss how Calibra company should have accounted for the sale of the apartment blocks in accordance with IFRS 15 revenue from contracts with customers and IS 23 borrowing costs. Calibra operates in the property sector and has invested in new technology, distributed ledgers, blockchains to trade and to support property transactions. The financial year end of Calibra company is 31st of December 2018. Apartment blocks. Calibra company builds apartment blocks which normally take 2 years to complete from the date of signing the contract. The performance obligation is satisfied at the point in time the title and possession and therefore control of the apartment block passes to the customer upon the completion of the construction. The price which is payable on the completion of each of the apartment block is 9.55 million. Alternatively, the customers can pay 8.5 million cash on the day the contract is signed. Alternatively, the customer can pay 8.5 million cash on the day that contract is signed. Can pay 8.5 million on the day the contract is signed. The chief accountant has calculated that this represents an appropriate borrowing rate of 6% for Calibra company. Calibra immediately recognizes 8.5 revenue the customer pay when they sign the contract. See, on the day the contract has been signed, 8.5% वो कस्टमर तो दे रहा है उसको, लेकिन उसको recognize तभी करना चाहिए when the control has been passed on to the customer. So according to FI 15 revenue from contracts with customer, the revenue should be recognized when the control has been passed on to the customers. Actually, the revenue should be recognized either at the point in time or over the period of time. Here in this scenario, we can see that it is at the point in time. Thus revenue should be recognized when the control is passed on to the customers. Control means that acting the user of the asset and gaining economic benefits out of it. Thus whenever the customer pay 8.5 million in cash on the day when the contract is signed, that should be recorded as a contract liability. ठीक है? And when that is recorded as a contract liability, interest rate should be charged upon that, which is 6%. तो 8.5 के ऊपर 6% अगर हम निकालेंगे 0.5 million के ऊपर, then that is 0.51, and that will be the interest charge, and that will be charged upon this 8.5. That's the over the period of 2 years, which will sum up to 9.55 million over the period of time, which is 9.55 million की बन जाएगी. And then when finally the it has been passed on to the customer, the asset has been passed on to the customer, मतलब यहाँ पे अपार्टमेंट ब्लॉक है वो, तब अपन रिकॉग्नाइज पूरा का पूरा रेवेन्यू कर सकते हैं इन द सेकेंड ईयर. टिल दैट पीरियड ऑफ टाइम अकॉर्डिंग टू IS 23 borrowing cost, the 0 point sorry the 6% of interest should be capitalized upon the qualifying asset, which in this case is the apartment block. According to IS 23, interest, the मतलब borrowing cost क्या होता है? Borrowing cost is the interest which has been charged upon the qualifying asset, and a qualifying asset is an asset that takes substantial period of time to get ready for its intended use or sale. तो ये अपन बता देंगे. नीचे आई थिंक जर्नल एंट्रीज भी पूछी है, तो वो होंगी देखो हम लोग क्रेडिट कर रहे हैं अपनी कॉन्ट्रैक्ट लायबिलिटी, डेबिट रिसीवेबल्स, क्रेडिट कॉन्ट्रैक्ट लायबिलिटी. उसके बाद इंटरेस्ट के केस में इंटरेस्ट अकाउंट मतलब P&L डेबिट टू कॉन्ट्रैक्ट लायबिलिटी, P&L डेबिट टू कॉन्ट्रैक्ट लायबिलिटी. एंड लास्ट ईयर में ना कॉन्ट्रैक्ट लायबिलिटी अकाउंट डेबिट टू रेवेन्यू, वो वाला एंट्री मार देंगे। चेक करते हैं, देखो। Revenue recognition. Control of the apartment block passes to the customer on completion. This is the point at which the revenue should be recognized. Calibra is therefore incorrect to recognize revenue on receipt of payment. There is a 2-year delay between payment and the transfer of the underlying asset. This means that in accordance with IFRS 15 revenue from contracts with customer, these advance payments contain a significant financing component. In such cases, the revenue recognized should be the amount that the customer would have paid if they had paid cash at the date the good was transferred, that is 9.55. On the receipt of payment, Calibra should recognize the liability of 8.5. देखो जैसे हमने बोला, it should subsequently accrue interest on the liability, which is 6%, which will increase the carrying amount of the liability. After 2 years, the liability will have a carrying amount of 9.55 million. When control of the apartment building is transferred, the liability is de-recognized. The revenue of 9.55 million recognized in the statement of profit or loss. Where IS-23 borrowing cost states that the borrowing costs that are directly attributable to the acquisition, construction, or production of the qualifying asset form part of the cost of the asset. A qualifying asset is one which takes substantially long time to get ready for use. The apartment buildings takes 2 years to construct, so are qualifying assets. Calibra company's business model is construction, and therefore the applicable borrowing rate should be included in the cost of its inventory. Any other borrowing costs are recognized as an expense. फिर ये देखो जर्नल एंट्रीज, देखो क्या पास होंगी। कैश, ओ सॉरी, मैंने शायद रिसीवेबल्स अकाउंट डेबिट बोला था, सो यहाँ पे होगा कैश अकाउंट डेबिट टू लायबिलिटी। देन दे हैव सेड इन्वेंट्री में डाल दो इस चीज को, इंटरेस्ट एक्रूइंग ऑन लायबिलिटी इंक्लूड इन द कॉस्ट ऑफ इन्वेंट्री। बिकॉज हमारा धंधा ही अगर बिल्डिंग्स बेचने का है, क्योंकि यहाँ पे देख सकते हैं, यहाँ पे हमारा धंधा ही बिजनेस बेचने का है, तो दे हैव बिल्डिंग्स बेचने का है, तो दे हैव सेड कि इन्वेंट्री अकाउंट डेबिट पास ऑन कर दो। Many students struggle with journal entries, though there is an assumed knowledge for SBR. Make sure that the debits and credit balances below are the journal entries produced by examining team. The scenario says that the cash received is posted to revenue. So your first journal entry might instead be revenue account debit credit liability. ठीक है, लेकिन इन्होंने पास ऑन किए पहले, रिमूव द इनकरेक्ट एंट्री टू रेवेन्यू एंड रिकॉर्ड, ठीक है। बट बेसिकली इन्होंने क्या बोला है यहाँ पे कि हमने रेवेन्यू पूरा का पूरा रिकॉग्नाइज कर दिया 8.5 का, तो उसको डी रिकॉग्नाइज कर देते हैं पहले। तो 8.5 को हमने डी डी रिकॉग्नाइज कर दिया रेवेन्यू अकाउंट डेबिट टू लायबिलिटी करके। तो यहाँ से हम लोग शुरुआत कर सकते हैं। बट दे हैव स्टार्टेड विद कैश अकाउंट डेबिट टू लायबिलिटी। मतलब यहाँ पे उन्होंने बोला एंट्री को करेक्ट कैसे पास ऑन कर दें, यहाँ पे उन्होंने बोला है कि पहले से ही क्या करना चाहिए था, ऐसा उन्होंने यहाँ पे बोला हुआ है। इंटरेस्ट एक्रूइंग ऑन लायबिलिटी, देखो 6% और 8.5 इंक्लूड इन द कॉस्ट ऑफ इन्वेंट्री। ये लोग इस चीज को कॉस्ट ऑफ इन्वेंट्री में डाल रहे हैं, अपन ने पीएनएल में डाला था, विच इज आई थिंक शुड बी फाइन। बट ठीक है, वी विल पास ऑन द इन्वेंट्री। जहां पर हमारा धंधा अगर बिल्डिंग्स बनाने का होगा तो हम इन्वेंट्री में पास ऑन कर सकते हैं, ठीक है। देन लायबिलिटी अकाउंट डेबिट एंड देन रेवेन्यू, वो हमारी लास्ट एंट्री हमारी सही थी, लेकिन ऊपर हमने कैश भूल गए, और यहाँ पे फॉर दिस पर्टिकुलर सिनेरियो इट इज इन्वेंट्री। Discuss the ways in which the chief accountant should have acted to ensure that he maintained ethical standards in dealing with the issues described. चीफ अकाउंटेंट को क्या करना चाहिए था? The chief accountant does not hold a permanent employment contract with Calibra company. He has applied for the position on a permanent basis and is to be interviewed in the near future. Bodoni Bodoni company, a customer of Calibra, wanted to take advantage of 8.5 reduced price of the apartment block but was having problems with the cash flow. The chief accountant therefore allowed Badoni to pay 8.5 and delay the payment until 1 month after the contract was signed. In return, Badoni was agreed to provide a good employment reference. The chief accountant of Calibra, the chief accountant of Calibra, was afraid that he might lose Badoni Company as a customer and referee if he did not agree to delay the payment. ठीक है, तो मतलब बंदे 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 को लगा कि he will lose him as a client and as a good reference की बडोनी will not give a good reference अगर उसने कस्टमर को ज़्यादा दिनों का क्रेडिट नहीं दिया तो इज ओके. Distributed ledger technology. Calibra company has recently used distributed ledger technology, blockchain, to sell shares in a property to investor. These digested transactions are only visible to the authorized parties. The chief accountant publicly supports this technology and is to manage the new system. However, he has private concerns over the reliability of the due diligence on of the carried out carried out on the sale of property share and the potential violation of local regulation. The directors of Calibra want to increase the number of transactions on the distributed ledger by offering digital shares in the whole of the entity's property portfolio. Although the chief accountant has very basic knowledge of the distributed ledgers, he has assured the directors that he can facilitate this move. The project has been approved by the board despite the chief accountant's private reservations. The chief accountant has only recently qualified as an accountant and wishes to be employed for Caliber. Okay. तो चीफ अकाउंटेंट ने बहुत कुछ लगाया है. पहली बात तो चीफ अकाउंटेंट Okay, chief accountant first of all does not hold a permanent employment contract with Calibra company. He has applied for the permission of a permanent basis and is to be interviewed in the near future. Thus, there can be certain self-interest threat for the chief accountant because there can be scenarios wherein he will try to present himself as a better employee, in order to gain the trust of the director or the trust of the company so that he can get a permanent employment contract. In the two scenarios above, we can see the reflections of what the chief accountant has done in order to gain a permanent contract. In the first scenario, Badoni, the a customer but only wanted to take advantage of 8.5 million reduced price and thus must have lured the chief accountant in order to give him an extra credit month for making the payment to Calibra company. Uh, accountants um, Accountants who do not have a permanent employment contract will get lured into this because he would want to fix his position in the company. It can also be seen that chief accountant was afraid that he might lose Badoni company as a customer. If a customer has been lost in his presence of being in employment, then this won't reflect well in his resume or it won't reflect well in his tenure and thus would raise questions about him being employed or not, or would have a negative impact on him being employed, because of which Baloney company might have manipulated the chief accountant, uh, and it would have left him to give him a month credit. And इतना ही ठीक है, मेरा would have manipulated him. The chief accountant should not have been afraid and should have been resilient upon the fact that he should have treated every customer in the same manner and would have taken the payment during the contract signing itself and should not have delayed the payment 1 month after the contract was signed. ये अपन बता देंगे क्योंकि अपने को which way he behaved वो भी बताना है. This clearly states that the chief accountant had a self-interest in the company and was trying to create his own reputation or trying to create an image. अच्छा, तीन चीजें जो है A chief accountant has acted to behave in वो 5 manners वो बता देंगे according to ACCA code of ethics, which is professional, which is integrity, objectivity, professional behavior, professional competence and due care, and confidentiality. In the later scenario, when it came to the distributed ledger technology, we could see that Calibra company has recently used a sales share administrator. This data share the only visible to authorized party for this technology to manage the new system. However, he considers the reliability and due diligence carried out the property shares. The directors wanted to increase the number. When the directors wanted to increase the number of transactions on the distributed ledger by offering digital shares in the whole of the entity's property portfolio, the chief accountant uh, should have had knowledge about the increased transactions, or should have had knowledge about the distributed ledger technology to take on the job. However, the chief account had very basic knowledge of the distributed ledgers, and still he assured the director that he can facilitate this move. This can raise questions on his integrity, objectivity, and professional competence. The accountant is not professionally competent to carry out the job, but still he has agreed upon the job. He would not want the director. He would not want the directors to feel that he's incompetent of performing higher level jobs, or is not authoritative, because it would not authoritative nahi. He is not ready to take on the responsibility, as it would not reflect good upon his tenure and would impact negatively upon the employment contract. Employed on a permanent basis where was approved by board as part of the chief of a private reserve. Either or एक है कि even the chief accountant had certain concerns over the reliability of due diligence carried out on the sale of property shares and potential violation of local regulations. The accountant should have disclosed his issues to the directors fairly, and not agreed upon what they are saying, and not just agreed um, upon their decisions. Uh, he would have thought, or the chief accountant would have thought that by asking more questions, it would reflect as if he had poor knowledge about the distributed ledger technology, and that's why would have kept these questions to himself. The chief accountant should not claim to have an understanding of distributed ledgers. If he only has basic knowledge, he should have seen evidence of whether the technology can be scaled up to the requirements of the directors before promising that he can facilitate the move. He must he must convince himself that the reliability of the due diligence on the sale of property shares and the local regulations are complied with in order to maintain integrity. Professional accountants must be honest about whether they are comfortable with their knowledge of managing projects such as this. The chief accountant should not manage the projects if he has doubts as his knowledge, as there may be significant issues as the project progresses. There may be a need to engage specialist consultancy input from the distributed ledger experts. Similarly, the chief accountant should have we should behave in a professional manner and determining whether the data on the distributed ledger breaks any confidentiality principles. He will need to consider the fact that local regulations may be violated and repercussions thereof. The technology allows resale of the shares in property, and given the chief accountant's worries over the due diligence, the illegal transfers of the ownership could be costly and time consuming to resolve. The chief accountant must also exercise independence of mind and not bow to political pressure from the board. Even though it may be high profile project for a company, he should inform the board of his reservations based upon his opinion and technical knowledge. One of the main concerns of accounting professionals is the fear of losing objectivity in their judgment due to the pressures of from the client. ये देखो employers and other stakeholders, मतलब ये वो बडोनी की बात कर रहे हैं. This occurrence would create a loss of professional identity for the person concerned. So, some individuals are more vulnerable to lose of objectivity than others. Young accountants at the beginning of their career could be considered a vulnerable group, and they may be more easily influenced due to perceived lack of experience and pressures from senior colleagues. The accountant has only just qualified and so must be inexperienced to be the position of the chief accountant. वो हाँ, हमने ये भी तो नहीं देखा कि वो जस्ट क्वालिफाइड है तो वो चीफ अकाउंटेंट कैसे बन गया, मतलब इतनी जल्दी। ये भी बोल सकते थे अपन। In this case, he has created a self-interest thread as the chief accountant has a personal interest in allowing Badoni company to pay a reduced amount 1 month after the contract for the purchase of the apartment block has been signed, as he wishes a good reference from the client when he applies for the permanent position. The pressure of applying for this position has inappropriately influenced his professional judgment and behavior. Additionally, there is a threat to the chief accountant's objectivity, which seems from a self-interest threat from the fear of losing Bardoni company as a client, which in turn would affect the accountant's chances of securing his position on a permanent basis. ये सब सेम ही चीज़ है जो अपन ने बोली। रेफरेंस उसको अच्छा रेफरेंस मिलने वाला था, इसीलिए वो क्लाइंट को लूज नहीं करना चाहता था। ये भी हमने एक्चुअली एक पॉइंट विच वी शुड हैव कवर्ड इज की जस्ट फॉर द गुड रेफरेंस ही वुड हैव ट्राइड टू सेव द क्लाइंट। हमने बस ये सोचा कि वो अपने टेन्योर में क्लाइंट खो गया तो उसके लिए गंदा दिखेगा ड्यूरिंग हिज इन हिज एम्प्लॉयमेंट कॉन्ट्रैक्ट और ड्यूरिंग हिज इंटरव्यू, ऐसा। So that is one important point.